Yeah.
All right.
So for
Good
the dynamics
afternoon.
of co-hosted podcast, I think I'm just requesting my the co-founder of O2 Pod Collective and the host of the Musafir Story, Saif, to take on from here. Saif, on to you.
Thank you, Naga. I'm just a humble member of the Otopod Collective, like everyone else, I guess. But yeah, thank you to Naga, Shiv, and a bunch of the others in the community who've helped on. My name is Saif, like Naga mentioned, and I co-host the Musafir Stories podcast. And we have a lovely panel that's coming up very shortly. It's about co-hosting, the dynamics of co-hosting, and working closely with your co-host, which I kind of relate to very closely as well, having my own experience hosting with my lovely co-host and wife, Faiza. Um, Before we kind of kick on with the session, I see our lovely panelists are on. I thought I'd do a quick intro to the panelists while we wait for Chhavi to chime in as well. Chhavi will be moderating the session. But without further ado, no particular order of priority. I just see Radhika at the top of my screen. So I'll start with Radhika first, the co-founder of Waka Media. But before that, Radhika is also the co-host of In the Field, right? A great podcast, as well as the latest that they've produced, which is The City of Women. So Radhika, do you want to do a quick intro, just a minute, and then we'll move on to Sindhu and Sneha and Ninora as well?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Seth, for having me on this panel. I'm Radhika Vishwanathan. I'm the co-founder, along with Samyukta Varma, of Vaka Media. We are a Bangalore-based podcast production company. We make a number of, I would say, largely narrative-driven podcasts. We began a few years ago with In the Field, which is about India and development. We've since added a number of shows. Ex Machina, which is about society, tech, and law. Kala Vasta, which was a mini series on Kerala and climate change and environment, and Sea Change, which is about big tech and development, and most recently, I think, City of Women, which is a show about women having fun and feeling free in their city, and it's supported by the Google Podcast Creator Program. So thanks very much for having us. I think Samyukta is also going to join shortly. I think sort of halfway through this panel. So, and thank you so much. Nice to meet you, Chhavi, Sneha, and Ninora as well.
Wonderful.
Hello.
Thank you. Sneha, you want to go next? Yeah. Oh my God.
Hi, I'm Sneha and I'm from Hyderabad. I co-host Khuni, The Crimes of India with my co-host Aditi, who you'll be meeting in a bit. So we started our podcast about 6 months ago because we were tired of, we are both true crime fans, and we just grew tired of listening to international podcasts that cover international crimes. So we thought we're also lawyers by profession. So we thought we'll use that and also create a podcast where we cover Indian crimes. And it's been a great journey till now.
Wonderful.
Nice
Chhavi, I'll do the last bit of honors. Chhavi, I'll just ask Ninora to introduce herself, and then I will be out of here. And all yours, Chhavi, after that.
Hi, I'm Ninora Brookshire. I'm one half of NRI Woman podcast. Actually, this is not my spot. I'm just taking Bettina's place right now. Bettina's been having some technical difficulties, and so she's based out of Dubai, and I'm based out of Miami. So we, like I said, this is not my spot, so I don't even know what to say, but I'm going to introduce myself anyway. So I'm the co-host of NRI Woman along with Bettina Tauro. She lives in Dubai, I live in Miami. We co-host this podcast. We've been doing this podcast for almost very close to 3 years now, if I'm not mistaken. And we're coming out with our season 5. What we do is we talk to women with inspiring stories, who have inspiring stories to tell. And as many of you know, NRI means non-resident Indian. And we have enjoyed doing this so much together. We're very, very close friends and family, actually. And we've enjoyed doing this. And we've enjoyed meeting so many people like you on this platform. It's mind-boggling how this community comes together. So we're truly honored to be on this panel, and we enjoy doing what we do.
That's wonderful. And you're being a true co-host filling in for your co-host. That's what we do.
having my co-hosts back, waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Exactly.
Just in case.
Wonderful.
Sorry, excuse me.
And last but not the least, the moderator of the panel, the great Chhavi Sachdev, one of India's earliest podcasters, and even more so being like literally the backbone of the Indian community, helping a lot of podcasters and organizations.
Excuse my dog. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Everybody wants to be a part of the panel, I guess. But yeah, like I was saying, Chhavi, founder of Sonologue, which is an organization that Chhavi runs that helps create podcasts. Chhavi, you have the full 45 minutes, so the timer is right there, so you don't have to worry about running a little behind. Over to you. I'll stop talking now.
Thank you for taking care of the introductions. So this panel, I thought would be interesting. I do a lot of workshops and I get a lot of questions from people who are thinking about starting a co-hosted podcast and they want to know the pros and cons. So, let's do this for them. And also, I've worked with people who are starting their podcasts and production for the back end. And there are many challenges as well. So for the people who are on the fence about whether they should do this, and then also if they've started, like how to be a better co-host, I thought this session would be a great place to get into the dynamics of co-hosting, the pros and cons, of course, of co-hosting. And of course, even if people were recording contiguously pre-COVID, the world has changed. So the setup and the behind the scenes in terms of actual logistics of co-hosting. So welcome and thank you all for doing this. I have also been on a couple of co-hosted podcasts. And before we get into all those other things, I want to know from all three of you, maybe alphabetically. So that would be Ninora, Radhika, Sneha. What is the best part about having a co-host in your podcast?
I think the best part is that you can bounce off ideas. It's just not your own idea. You can bounce off the ideas. If one agrees, one doesn't agree. But there's always the bouncing off. Okay, I don't know. I'm nervous. I don't know if I should do this. What do you think? What do you think? And I think in our case, because we're so close friends, we're such close friends that it just comes naturally to us. So we really, for us, it's not an issue because we bounce off ideas other than podcasting. Just our lives, our stories, our relationship, our friendship. So it's natural for us when it comes to podcasting.
Right, and you've got each other's back. You're up at the crack of dawn to represent. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
Radhika, what about you? What's the best part about having
Well, I agree with Ninora. It is really nice to have someone to bounce ideas off. But and I think professionally, it is very challenging when you're trying to make something and you come from very different perspectives. And I think your co-host is kind of your first listener as well. So and I think the process of creating together is very fulfilling. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I mean, for us. We started out podcasting together, and I think it came very naturally. So I mean, for us, sometimes when we say, "What do you like or what you don't like?" I don't know. I've never thought about that.
Yeah, pretty much. I agree with the both of them because Aditi is one of my closest friends. I've known her from law school. It's almost been 12 years. And this is something we've always wanted to do. And it's so much fun just doing something with one of your best friends. And there's always the part where, she tells me when we're each other's first editors also, I would say, in terms of, scripts, research and bouncing off ideas. So it's always great to do something with your very good friend.
Right. I want to come back to one of the things you said in a minute, but so all of your formats are really, really different. For all of us in the audience, you must go subscribe to them. These women make fantastic podcasts and they're so different from each other and they're so compelling. So Radhika and Samyukta make a couple of podcasts, but for this discussion, we'll focus on In the Field, which is really a documentary style podcast. It's nonfiction. They do research, interviews, and they put it together and narrate it. Nanora and Bettina put together NRI Women, and it is a scripted it's a scripted feature. They've done the interview previously, and then they present it with links that they introduce and talk about. And then Kuni is a scripted conversation where the two hosts, Sneha and Aditi, tell each other stuff that happened with the true crime. So supremely different, but of course, all three podcasts involve a lot of prep, because any podcast is 10% creativity and inspiration and 90% hard work behind the scenes. So when I used to do LSD cast, Prem and Rok were the anonymous guests, the hosts. We would split up. It's a chat. It's a fireside chat, and we are doing. We take advice. It's an advice column in podcast form. So we would take ownership of a question, and then work to figure out the different angles of it from a feminist point of view, and then sometimes even choose to take opposing points of view just to have a debate. But it was planned in advance. It was not like off the skin of our teeth. And then the writing and media, I want to know how you guys divide your responsibilities. Do you just do like, I'll do A, you do B, or do you say like, I'll do half of A and you do half of A, or do you just take turns? So if you could very succinctly, walk us through the jobs that you two take on and how you decide who's going to do what.
Do you want me to go first? Would you like me to go first? Yeah. Okay. So we start with doing the interviews together. So both of us will do when I lived in Dubai for 4 years, and that's where we started the podcast. And we moved to Miami almost 3 years ago. Long story short, we started with interviewing the guests together. So because we were both in the same country, so we were in the same city or whatever. And so we started doing that together. Bettina does the scripting. So she'll do the scripting, she'll do the editing, and she uploads the podcast onto all the podcast listening platforms. What we also do is we both write the script, the show notes, and lastly, what I do is I take care of the social media part. So I do all of the social media marketing. So that's how we split it between the two of us. But like I said earlier in the game, that we're constantly bouncing off ideas. So there are times that I won't be able to do something and she does it, she can't do it, I do it. So we're pretty equal when it comes to our podcast.
Nice. All right. Sneha, what about you guys?
Yeah. Pretty much we divide the responsibilities. So one of us writes the script. So it goes by whose case idea it is, because these are all cases or crime stories. So then that person writes, does the research, and then we record together. And then Aditi does the editing, and I do the show notes and social media part of it, and uploading and outreach and everything else. So that's pretty much how it works. But there's always that whole conversation. We review each other's scripts. There's always constant communication. So that's pretty much how we work.
And what about editing and uploading and?
Oh, so Aditi does the editing and I do the uploading. Did you?
Okay. Radhika, please.
Sure. Actually, Samyukta's not online yet, so I'm going to confess and say things that I would never say to her face, which is that, creative partnerships are really rare to find, and especially female-led creative partnerships. So, and I absolutely, this is something I cherish a lot, that we work together. When we come to making In the Field, and even with our other shows, I think the creative process we do together, there's a lot of debating on what should we do, what angle do we take. I mean, it's very respectful. It's very exciting. We fight a lot, we talk a lot. And I think there are things that we divide up intentionally and things that we divide up unintentionally, in the sense that we script everything together. We do the interviews together. There are certain tasks that we split up. I upload the files, but what I think we do is we constantly have a pull and push with each other. So we edit alternatively, because we're working on multiple episodes at a time. So someone's always editing, and when someone is editing, the other person is sort of taking a lead on soundscaping and things like that. And there are things that come naturally. Samyukta has an excellent sound here. I think one of the best I've found. She can hear like a pin drop, from miles away. I think I sort of tidy up scripts and things like that. But it's not as clear cut. I think it's extremely creative. So there's a lot of kind of, when I'm down, you pick up and you handle things, and then when you're down, I pick up. But we're also managing multiple episodes at a time. So I would say it's pretty much 50-50, and then we take.
Very nice. A long time ago, I'd started working. I felt like I was doing all the work, and then when I flagged it, she said, "But that's what partners are for. They pick up the slack." Except she was always slacking, and I was always working. So we didn't make many episodes of anything. But you guys are clearly on a roll, and you've done well. How long have you known each other? Really quick, if you could just answer in years.
We've actually had very similar kind of life trajectories. We went to the same university at different times, though. I think I met Samyukta about 9 years ago, but we also work professionally. I mean, we were not sort of childhood friends, although we sort of had crossing, interlinking circles. But I think we've been working professionally for about 5 years now.
Nice.
We have
and Nora?
We've lost track of how long we've known each other. So
I think Bettina said it's 20 years. You've been best friends for 12.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Yeah. So she's kept track. I haven't. but yeah, we've been friends. Or maybe I think it's my memory. I think I'm aging. But no, we've been close friends a long time, and we always get, because we look so similar, right? So we always get told that we're sisters more than we're both Mangalorians. So what do you expect? The curly hair, the round face. So we've known each other a long time.
I get it. Yeah. What about Sneha and Aditi? How long have you been?
We've known each other from like first year of our law school, which was like 12 years ago. So yeah, and we've been really good friends since then. So
all right. So I have a question to do with this. When I did LSD cast, Prem and Rogue, the anonymous hosts, are siblings. So Prem has known Rogue his whole life because she's older than him. And I've also worked with a team that didn't know each other very well. So they were colleagues, and they were on this podcast, like an assignment together. So, two-part question. Like, how important do you think it is to have chemistry? And is that something you develop? Even though you know each other really, really well, that doesn't always translate into having a good rhythm or a dynamic on the mic, in my opinion. So what is your take on that, and do you have ways that you've worked on it? Are there actual things you've done to get that rhythm and that chemistry going on the mic? Sneha, you're nodding. I can tell that you've thought about this.
Yeah, a lot actually. So we record from two different places. So I'm in Hyderabad, Aditi's in Lucknow, and the internet connection, you can't really rely on it. So there's always not a lot of facial, like I can't see what she's going to say. So I think for almost our first 4-5 episodes, it was a bit of a task. So we used to try and, think of things we could do around them, maybe look at each other and talk normally otherwise as well, like off when we're not recording. Because once you start, it's obviously our first podcast and we're all like, oh my God, is this going to work? Is that going to work? It's there in the script, yes. But to bring that alive, it was a bit of a task for us. So we even practiced, in fact, our first episode. I'm not going to lie. So and it's very important to have that
practice is
chemistry.
really important. Practice. I used to make my clients do exercises, which are not, I mean, they're from different fields, like icebreakers and empathy exercises, just so that there's some rapport. Otherwise, also when you know each other well, tell me if you guys have fixed, you can see each other's gestures and you sort of know, oh, when they're reading this out or saying this out, like they're stumbling on it, or it's not fitting their personality. But if you don't know each other well, it's a discovery process at the same time as you're making the creation happen. Radhika and Samyukta.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. We co-host in the field together, and I think now, after having done 2 seasons, I think when we're reading the script and we're sort of assigning who says what, it comes very naturally to say, oh, this is I think what you would say, and you do the conclusion, and I think it's just because we record together. Now we record remotely, but we're always, I mean, when I'm recording, she's listening in and coaching me, and I coach her. But we've also had experiences with other shows where we are working with someone we don't know that well, and that does take time to build that kind of trust. I think it's about trust in the end, and of sort of knowing, trust and alignment that we're all trying to work towards something. So you just got to trust when I ask you to do things, and it's really good, I think, when we're as co-hosts to have someone direct you. So we're very open to that.
Yeah, I'll agree with both of them. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing with us as well. And also because our podcast is scripted, so we can, especially now with me moving back home, and Bettina being in Dubai, we can record and record and record. Nobody knows how many times we've recorded, re-recorded till it sounds perfect. So when the podcast comes out, it sounds perfect. And nobody knows that we've sat in our closets, and re-recorded. So it's only because of that, because ours is scripted.
Right.
So it's easier for us.
Right. And how do you resolve conflicts? Radhika, you had said that sometimes you have different perspectives on something. So if you've actually got something different to present, how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, so we argue a lot. I think we have different perspectives when we come at a problem. So if we're working at a problem and saying this is what we're going to talk about in this episode, we come at it from a very different perspective. Samyukta comes at it; she brings in a lot of the larger context, the macro. She's always thinking about that, and I'm very sort of coming from the other side. I think about detail and stories, and I mean, I'm going to say it is very entertaining in the end to fight it out, and in the beginning it is a bit like that, because each person is coming with their own intuition and their gut instinct, but yet you still don't have the data to support what you want to say, right? So it's this constant tussle of back and forth. But I think what we've always had right from the beginning is 2 things. One is that in the field has its own voice, and its own voice that is independent of us, and 2, alignment. So as co-hosts, we don't need to agree on everything. As long as we align, and as long as we know that this is what the voice in the field would say, then we're okay. And I think I just come back to that. It takes a lot of trust, and it takes a lot of letting go, and that's how we work through it. But it is a lot of fun.
Right.
I mean, our creative meetings are crazy, and it's.
I just look at it. I look at our relationship.
What about?
Yeah, I look at our relationship as a marriage. It's a give and take. I always tell her she does remind me of my husband, because they have the same, their characters and their beliefs and everything is very similar. So sometimes I wonder how I'm close friends with her and not my husband. But long story short, I think that when there are two or more people involved, it's always a give and take. And I think one will always know more than the other. One will always be more subdued than the other. And I think the main and the most important part, which is our foundation of our podcast, is compromising. We pretty much stem it down to compromising with each other when it comes to our podcast. Because like she said earlier, that one will you'll always bring something to the table. Somebody will bring more, somebody will bring less, but we all learn, right? Together we learn. And that's how we've come this far. is our compromising.
Sneha, do you feel married to Aditi for the podcast?
Not yet. Not yet. So Aditi and I are as our personalities are very, to shy away from confrontation or conflict, which is kind of weird because we're both lawyers. But when it comes to the podcast, that is why we decided earlier, like when we started itself, okay, it's going to be, you have complete control over this episode. I will do this episode. You do this, you do that. So obviously there have been times when there were a little conflicts here and there, but it's mostly okay, one of us sulking and then the other one, then we realize, okay, let's just do this because she knows more, she's been reading up on this a little bit more. So I guess it's a mix of like sulking and compromising for us. That's how we resolve conflicts on our podcast.
See, it's a marriage.
Fair enough.
I wouldn't know about that.
And what about conflicts and scheduling? Sneha and Aditi, you both have full-time jobs that are not your podcast. So I know that's one thing. Ninora and you've been doing a long-distance podcast marriage for quite a while. And Radhika and Samyukta, you've been lucky because you were in the same city at least. But so tell me about how you manage your scheduling. What do you do if one of your busy or your family gets sick? What do you do? Sneha, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so we just keep our weekends free. So what we've done, we've started during COVID. So pretty much that rules out us going out on the weekend. So we have Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night free. So for now, we're able to maintain that schedule, and we just record on one of these days, and it comes out early part of that next week. So till now, it really hasn't been an issue for us. So I'm just hoping we'll be able to do, but I'm sure we'll find a way around this even when we go back to regular jobs and start working in offices.
What about, are you guys working week to week? Like you're actually producing for the week that you're putting out right away?
That was initially when we started, but now we have like a couple, we have about like say a month's episodes in hand.
Oh, I'm so relieved for you. My God. I was having like palpitations on your behalf. Radhika, what about you guys? How have you managed your schedule, especially if you're working on multiple episodes at one time?
Yeah. Well, it is crazy. I'm not going to say that it isn't. I think, just we have milestones and external deadlines that we stick to. And I think we, especially with COVID, people have different times of the day that they work in, and they're more productive in. So I think within that, we have a lot of leeway to get the day-to-day work done. But I think we're pretty strict about the milestones, because as you know, with podcasting, it has to go from one thing to another. It's like a conveyor belt. Otherwise, the episodes don't get made. But yeah, and weekends we don't like to work. And we're both particular about that.
Well, for us,
I'm with you on that. Definitely.
For us, I think the time difference has been a huge challenge. It worked much better when I lived in Dubai, because then we were always, on the same time zone, the same. So and now it's a huge challenge. But like I said, and like I'll keep saying throughout this whole conversation, is that we have come to an understanding, because we both have lives. Bettina's got small children, I've got teenagers. Whether you have them young, your children are young or they're old, they're children. They always need us. So there's always a balance. So we're always juggling between, and Bettina also works with her husband. They run a company back in Dubai. So and I do something else as well on the side. So we're always juggling, but we make it a point that, like, if she sets boundaries or if we set boundaries together on, on our chats and stuff, we try to follow it as much as we can. We try to make it happen. We also work on the weekends. It doesn't matter. I mean, if her weekends are different from mine, as you know, in Dubai, it's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And for me, it's Saturday, Sunday. But we really don't, because this is what we want to do, right? We're not forced to do it. So we like doing it. We like podcasting and we like working on this. So we've not let the time difference really bother us as much. But I'll be honest, it has been a problem.
What about your working styles? How has that impacted your approach and your output? Like with LSD Cast, my Prem was very much a fly by the seat of his pants kind of dude, where he would show up with like his research basically on his phone, and I was the one. I make spreadsheets. I have like all these documents that I have made in the cloud and shared them, and then I lose my temper when he hasn't checked them. And the same with even other people I've watched co-hosting. Sometimes the approach is just different, and to how you want to research something or make decisions, even selecting guests or topics. You just, what do you do? Is it just like give and take? Okay, I'll take this one, you take this one, and we'll equally get to it? Or is one person the veto master? Like, I'm gonna say executive decision no, or something. How does that work with you guys when your work styles are not the same because you're not the same person? Sneha? There's a time lag. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. So Aditya and I, we've sort of grown up through about, say, it was a good 7 years. I think we've been not in law school, at least 5 years. We've known each other. We've known how the other person works. We've written papers together. So transitioning that into a podcast was actually kind of very simple for us, because we pretty much work the same way. We both, like the meticulous type. We like to read up more. Okay, this is not working out. This is not fitting in with this. Okay, this piece of fact needs to be checked. Okay, let me read this. I don't have the time for it. I call up Aditi. Can you do this? And so that part has just come seamlessly for us.
Yeah.
So we've been lucky that way.
Yeah, it sounds good. Enviable. Laura, what about you guys? Do you ever have conflicting work patterns?
I'll be honest. We had in the first year. We because, like you said, our styles. We're two different people. Even though we have the same beliefs, we have the same values. Even though we look alike, we're two different people. And so the first year, we had a little bit of the creases, the wrinkles, that we had to kind of iron out. And but over time, I just realized, listen, and I think she did too. Listen, just let her do what she has to do. I'll do what I have to do, and we'll come in between. We'll meet halfway somewhere. Yeah. So, and we always said this, and we still today we continue to say this, that our friendship is really important. It truly is. So the podcasting will come, podcasting will go. Husbands will come, husbands will go. Hopefully not, but I'm just saying. Our friendship is very important. So, like I said, we've always come to a middle ground. Whether we agree, what is the saying? You agree to disagree, or disagree to agree, or something like that. So it's one of those stories for us. We always come to a middle ground.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What's the longest like one of you has not talked to the other because of podcast?
We talk every day, almost every day. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So something or the other, but we talk every day. Yeah, so everything gets squeezed into these conversations, from the podcast to the families to everything.
Nice. And Radhika and Samyukta, what about you guys?
Two things. I think one is that we both came from similar professional backgrounds before we started podcasting. So we're both trained as researchers, social science researchers, and we both kind of worked in communication in the non-for-profit space. So we had a very similar training. So one thing that did help us was that we had very similar sort of methodologies that we would go about researching stuff and putting together our ideas. When it comes to, and we also, with specific reference to in the field, I mean, in all our shows, we take a really long time figuring out the shape and scope and voice of the show before the episodes even begin. So there's a lot of that conflict that happens, and resolution even before the show sort of hits the feeds. And then so that does take working through, and that's kind of when you have half-baked ideas, you're putting them forward. Do they work? Do they don't? You're testing them. You just got to go through it. And then when you're in production, I mean, of course there are conflicts. There are the longer conflicts that simmer. There are the smaller ones. But I think we're always constantly talking. We also know that we're kind of building a business together. So you can't just disappear for a week. I think we call each other out a lot as well, and that helps. So we just say, we got to move on. Let's just figure this out.
Right. So like mature adults, basically.
I mean, I say this now. It's taken time. We've been working for 5 years now, so you kind of now we're more comfortable with each other. But yeah.
Yeah, pretty much the same.
All right. So I'm hearing you all say that communication is really, really important, and in my experience, also practice, which experience, practice, and then practicing good communication and not letting it get in the way of your product. So do you guys have any advice for people who are considering getting on a co-host? Making a podcast is hard work. And when you're doing it all yourself and you're an indie podcaster, you're everything. You're the producer, the showrunner, the editor, the interviewer, the scripter, the host. So a co-host, I mean, you guys are selling it. It sounds like a great way to bounce ideas off, have somebody. Any advice for people who are looking to start a co-hosted podcast, either with somebody they know or not? Ninora?
I mean,
I say better the devil you know.
Sorry.
Just I said I would say better the devil you know. Just pick somebody somebody who won't judge you, and just you get along with, because I think it'll just make it easy. And if you don't know the person, that's also okay. I'm just kidding. But just compromise. Compromise is key. Just like any relationship, compromise is key.
Fair enough. Good advice. I hope I'm taking notes.
I mean, I would just add to that is, I think when you're co-hosting, the show the show has its own voice. Whether you're a single host or whether you're a co-host, it kind of has a life of its own and a voice of its own. And so I think both co-hosts have to work towards finding that. And that, in that sense, I would say you don't have to agree on anything. You need to align. And if you have alignment on what the voice of your show is and what you want your show to become, that's what you need. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I completely agree with the both of them. Like, it would be the known devil would be better, but then if you can't find someone then you might as well find someone who thinks like you, or just whatever you do it for the good of the show, because that's what's the most important part right now. So I guess that's about it.
And try to find a co-host that looks like you, so you can step in. You can step in when the co-host can't make it.
So at this point, I'm thinking we should ask your co-host to join us and spill the beans about all the other stuff that you haven't told us.
I hope that Bettina will be able to get on.
Yeah, I hope so. We've also got a couple of questions. So we can, I thought we'd wait for another 5 minutes to take the questions. Let's see if, Samyukta's coming on, and Aditi and Bettina, I hope, will join us. All right. So all three of you script your podcasts pretty heavily. Like, do you go with actual written words or do you go with notes?
Oh, yay. I see Bettina.
I mean, ours
Okay,
are
I think
scripted
everybody's here.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. There's a weird time lag at my end, so I apologize. Hello, Aditi, Bettina, and Samyukta.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, you can.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can.
Let me turn the video. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
See,
It
she's
is like looking
lookalike.
at
She just has more hair.
similar.
More hair, that's all. Uh-oh.
Okay.
Okay, I am back. Right. Sorry about that. So, ladies, Aditi, Samyukta, Bettina, what is the best part about having a co-host?
I think the best part of having a co-host is that sometimes if you feel like slacking off, your co-host will pick up the slack after you, which Sneha has done at least once for me.
Oh no!
Yeah. No, but Aditi's done the
That's very
same for me.
honest.
So
I appreciate it.
yes, thank you. We've done the
And that's
same
all.
for each other. Yeah. No, but in all
Fair enough.
seriousness,
Yes, it is. It
like
is
like
nice.
we like we mentioned earlier, juggling jobs and other commitments along with the podcast is extremely difficult. Sometimes your other commitments sort of butt in with your podcasting duties, so you have to have having a co-host who you can rely on in certain situations, who will not judge and will also step in and be understanding. That is very important, and I think Sneha and I, we both are able to do that for each other. So that's the best part for me.
Nice. Bettina, what about you?
I'm just going to say pretty much like, everything in life, anything that's shared, if it's a burden, sorry, excuse me, when you share it with somebody, it's half of it. And if it's fun, it's double the fun. So it's a bit similar when it comes to having a co-host. You have someone who has your back. And especially if it's someone that you have a good rapport with, have a good relationship with, it can be a lot of fun. And when you are not up to it, somebody's there to kind of lift you up and say that, listen, don't worry about it. We can get through this together. So I think that's the best part about having a podcast host, a co-host.
Nice. That does make it sound wonderful. And Samyukta, what about you?
It is.
Hi, everybody. I think the thing is, with Radhika and I, I think we suffer from perfectionism in some way, and we're both really particular about getting things right. So I would say it's great to have somebody to share the fear with, because I think we're both very anxious people about getting things right and different things right, and so I think if I had to make podcasts on my own, I would make it all in my head. It would never, ever come out, and become anything. So I would say, yeah, I think sharing the sort of like the anxiety is a big part of it as well.
I also feel like sometimes there's somebody out there who is like able to just say, okay, stop. Like, this is good enough. And that's helpful. While if you are in like a jag of trying to just get it absolutely right, oh no, the sound is, I got stuck on sound design. So it's a good thing either to have, for me, if I'm doing it on my own, like a time cap. Okay, now I just can't spend any more time on it. Or somebody to just say, it is fine now, really, you've done it, and you can walk away. And the other thing I also feel really helps is accountability. Like you, if I were to do it on my own, not only, I'm not a perfectionist by any means, but I feel like if you're doing it in a vacuum, it's hard to motivate yourself after a certain point, and also then you might slack off and just be like, okay, this week I won't release an episode, I'll just do it the following week. And then that sort of derails slightly. If you have somebody who's like, hey, it's Friday, you're sort of forced to put on your big girl pants and show up. Yeah. What is the not so great stuff about having a co-host? Go on, Dish. Tell us. We should have Radhika and Sneha and Nora leave for this part.
Honestly, I don't think there is
no downsides.
A flip side. Yeah, no, not really. I mean, especially if it's a co-host that you can get along with and you share sort of the same idea about what your episode should sound like, what it should be like, and you have a shared vision, then really there aren't any downsides. Of course, it comes down, I mean, you guys have already covered in your earlier thing about managing certain expectations versus, differences of opinion and all of those things. And the way we look at it is fundamentally is how can I be a better co-host versus what do I expect of the other person? And I think the only person that can really sort of bring about any change to an equation or how they think about it is what they do and what they bring to the table. It's not possible. There's no point in sitting back and saying you should be doing this and you should be doing that, because that doesn't really work. And I think that is our attitude towards working together. So I think there are more upsides and really no downsides as the way we look at it. Yeah. Sorry, Chhavi has left the building.
Okay, you guys still hear me, I hope. Even my internet's okay.
Yes, we have.
What timing? I just stepped in. But yeah, hopefully Chhavi will be back on. Just running kind of a little over time. There was a couple of questions. I don't know if you had a chance to kind of take any of those. And also, by the way, meet my wonderful co-host, Faiza.
Hi, Faiza.
Everybody's blaming me that I take all the limelight away, so I pulled Faiza into this one.
Sorry, I lost audio there for a second. But it sounds like it's a good thing to also hold yourself responsible for the product and the show. So
yes,
that is an important thing for all co-hosts to think about.
Please.
And so Sandesh has asked a question. We've got just a couple minutes left, so let's ask. Has there been a situation, and Saif, a co-hosted podcast host as well, has there ever been a situation where you felt like your co-host was not interested enough or not spending enough time on something as you were? And if that happened, then what did you do?
Is that a question for me or
anybody?
Yeah, what's the question?
Oh, okay.
We're all waiting for Saif to answer.
It's open. Whoever. Yeah.
No, wait, I'll go first.
Yeah, Saif has actually gone through that sometimes because I have certain stuff that I do, and yeah, so he pretty much.
I use that as more than kind of looking at it as slacking off. I look at it as kind of motivating the other person not to kind of give this up. And yeah, like a lot of you have mentioned that it's almost like being married to your co-host. In my case, fortunately or unfortunately, I am married to my co-host. So I have no option but to kind of pull each other up. But yeah, it's a great journey. That's all I can say. You have to use it to motivate the other. And do it for yourself and do it for the listener also, because you're actually putting up something for the listener, right? You've worked so hard to kind of build a community of listeners around this. So do it for yourself and do it for the listener.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't forget who your podcast is for and why you're doing it. Anybody else? Have you had I think you've said you communicate and you call them out on it.
Yeah.
And anything else creative that you've had to do or done?
So, I mean, when it comes, it's no different from working in a team. If you were in any other job, right? People have ups and downs and good days and bad days, and then that's when you communicate, like we said, like everyone has said. I think, especially when you're working in a creative space like a podcast, your co-host might be, at a low inspiration level, and I think that's different from having a low day where they're not doing work or they're slacking off, but just like, man, I'm just uninspired right now. And I think that's when you come in as a partner and you talk more creatively. You send them podcasts that you like. We spend a lot of time talking about, I found something new. What do you think of it? Go listen to it. And that's how you just rekindle that. And so I think it's important to recognize, there's a difference between sort of low management work days, but low creativity days. You have to be there and send them stuff and, help them get back. And it ebbs and flows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So another question we've got is from Nadir, who says, when you have a guest and then the conversation isn't going where you want it to be, how do you and your co-host it where you want while staying on the same page? I think Bettina and Ninora do their interviews mostly together, so maybe you can address this.
Yeah, sometimes that does happen, when we're chatting with a guest, the story, what they're talking about, it goes off topic. And gently, you have to ask them a question that brings them back to you. I mean, you can't interrupt, you let them flow. The advantage with our podcast is because it's not an interview-based podcast, we have the luxury of letting them sort of say what they want to say because we know that we can edit it out later. And keeping them, and often we are sharing stories of women which are not necessarily comfortable. So for example, we've shared stories about addiction, about loss of a child to suicide. And these are not necessarily stories that, and I remember like the one that we did on addiction, the actual interview was, I think, almost like 2 hours. That was simply because the person we were interviewing was so hesitant with sharing their stories, was extremely nervous, was feeling anxious. So there were these long gaps about what they were saying. They were stopping, pausing. So if it is an interview-based style, then really it comes down to, as an interviewer, one has to learn how they can improve their skills to bring out the kind of story that they want to hear, and to also guide their guest into a direction so that they can be more articulate or shorter. But if it's like in our style, I think we kind of let the guests tell us what we want, because sometimes we find that the interesting parts come out in the unexpected moments in our kind of format. So it works to our advantage often in letting the guest kind of go off track a bit.
Definitely. I think a lot of interviews, especially with, I'm sure Samyukta and Radhika, are also discovery interviews where you learn more things as you're going through them because you prepare so much. I wanted to add something about, which is that when you're doing a video chat co-hosted, there are tools you can use with your co-host that are invisible to your guest. So if you're doing a Zoom, you can do a PM with a private message with your co-host and be like, oh my God, this is going completely crazy. Are you going to interrupt him or am I? And these don't have to be shared with your guest. Your guest can keep speaking. Or WhatsApp. We often have WhatsApp open at the same time, and because then we're on different locations sometimes, and you don't want to be rude or interrupt them. But as a producer, when you know what you want from them and it's derailed completely, you have to bring them back, and it is important, especially when you can't see your co-host. In the studio, we have different things that we do. I'm sure you guys do too, Radhika, Samyukta, where you gesture to each other like kill it or wind up, but you can't do that to your guest. So it's I think WhatsApp is a nice thing to have if you're not all in the same room and WhatsApping somebody. Did anybody want to add something to the
I did.
Guest?
Yeah, it's quite interesting actually, because a lot of the guests that Radhika and I interview are people who are not media savvy in any way, and they're often scientists or researchers and have barely interacted with people themselves, and so we have a lot of sort of warming up that we have to do to kind of get them. And I like what you said, Bettina, because I tend to be the one, we always prepare questions, but I tend to be the one who goes rogue and then asks something dumb or takes them off on a tangent sometimes. And you're also always looking for, especially with sort of not very animated academic type of people who, they don't tend to have a very sort of lively way of speaking. So what we've realized is that we kind of have to be provoke them to say things in more and go off the kind of scripted thing that they'll come and tell us, like, oh, I run this NGO, we have 6 verticals, we do this, this, and this. And we're just like, tell us what you do every day and what's your daily life like. So we've come up with more and more of these kinds of strategies. But yeah, we're constantly talking and what's happening back and forth and sort of trying, kind of strategizing during the interview to see what we can do. And it's always the last 15 minutes. In the last 15 minutes, you get the best stuff because everyone's exhausted by that point. And they're just like, they've already been talking to you for like close to an hour or often more. And then in the last 15 minutes, they'll stay like, they just want to get rid of you or whatever. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, finally they've relaxed. The tone is much more relaxed. And like they're speaking to you like you're a human being. And then it's like, that's, so we know that there's this like long kind of warm up time to get some guests to a certain point.
Right. I also wanted to add that even if you are doing just an interview podcast, you should edit. Everyone should edit. Don't just run it from A to Z because you recorded it. So if your guest has gone on a tangent, take it out.
Yeah.
That's my workshop mode. That's the teacher in me coming out. Okay. Somebody had, please.
I just wanted to, since we would be doing interviews in the future, I just wanted to ask a question for your point about edits. Would the guest be okay with the editing? Because I would presume that sometimes they would not like what they have said to be truncated or edited out in any way.
It's your podcast, but we can have a bigger conversation about this. I think there's a session on scripting tomorrow, and I'm happy to chat about all my opinions on everything later. But we have run out of time. Saif, is that why you came on, actually? Tell us that we need to...
I can confirm that, Chhavi. Naga's been texting me away saying that we're supposed to be...
All right.
I think like this is what happens on my podcast, that conversations get so great that they end up beyond time. But that's fine. We had a great session. The only thing I'd like to call out is we do have networking tables available. So feel free to hang out and chat more with all these lovely hosts and co-hosts and Chhavi as well. So I think that, Chhavi, I'd like to just pass it on to you for any closing remarks, and we could move on to the next session perhaps.
I think having a co-host is a wonderful, wonderful thing for both co-hosts as well as your audience, as well as your podcast, if your content supports it. And I'm sorry we didn't get to the other questions. They don't really, we don't have the time and they're not really great, but fits for the co-hosting thing. But networking time is open, and thank you all for joining me. It's been absolutely wonderful to have your opinions and experiences, and I hope you inspire. I know you'll inspire many, many new podcasters who want to listen to you and then follow your path. So
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, Chhavi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.